Now we've got a real interesting interview for you. It is with Wayne Allen Root, the former vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2008. He's got a book also, The Conscience of a Libertarian, Empowering the Citizen Revolution with God, Guns, Gambling, and Tax Cuts. Wayne, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hey, Jake, how are you?
I'm good. I should clarify ahead of time that we have a lot of Libertarian listeners, and I like some parts of the Libertarian platform, and that I have my own problems with the stimulus package. But I should tell you ahead of time, I'm not sure we're on the same sheet here as far as the stimulus package is concerned.
Well, we may be on different sides on economic issues, because I'm sure that, this is a show that values liberal economic philosophy. But when it comes to, anything, whether it's civil rights, personal freedoms, economic freedoms, I'm a libertarian. I want government out of your life, my life, our life, and I think in many ways that's both a conservative and a liberal message. I think liberals like you, don't you have a great distrust of government just like I do?
Well, I certainly have my issues. I certainly don't trust the government overall to do what's right, and you don't look into it. I believe in oversight. But that's where our differences lie. And my philosophy, by the way, on a personal level is not strictly just liberal policies. And so let me start on this oversight issue, because I think that's our biggest source of disagreement here. You say in an article that I read of yours that we had too much regulation, whereas I see that we had too little regulation when it comes to regulating the financial industry. That allowed them to take tremendous risks with the public's money.
Well, the difference probably between your philosophy and mine is that, I'm not saying that Wall Street wasn't greedy. You will never see me quoted as saying Wall Street wasn't greedy. Wall Street didn't help to lead to some of our financial problems. But I don't see how you could say that government didn't have an equally powerful position in what's happened to us now. You can't say government wasn't guilty, because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac never would have gotten involved in the terrible loans they were involved with if they didn't have assurances from the government that no matter what they invested in, government would back it. That's what caused the current problems. Get government out of the way and make private industry make decisions like that, and then when they fail, you can't blame government. They can't blame anyone, and they can't ask for a bailout or a handout.
Wayne, let's separate the two issues here. One is the financial collapse, and the other is the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac issue. Now, why are those separated? Because the real cause of the financial mess is the enormous risk that they took on top of the mortgages. So it was the credit default swaps, the CDOs, the leverage bets that the financial companies made. And the fact that the investment banks were merged with the commercial banks, thereby endangering everybody else's money, the consumer's money. So that problem was not a problem of too much government regulation. That problem was too little government regulation.
Well, you know what's interesting, Jack? Here's where I get mad at my liberal friends, because if you believe that, and if there is some truth to that, then how do you rationalize the fact that your hero, Barack Obama, is, number one of the biggest, recipients of contributions from all the companies that violated all the laws, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, AIG, you name it, they all gave as much or more money to Barack than any Republican or any conservative. And number two, Barack Obama's answer to all this is to hand billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, of taxpayer money to all these rich, greedy corporations so they can give big bonuses to their people with no restrictions whatsoever.
Now,
so I might agree with you, but I would say that government is enabling them by handing them bailouts.
We're talking to Wayne Allen Root. He ran for vice president for the Libertarian Party in 2008. Wayne, some of those points I agree with you. And on the show, we talked about how Citigroup was funding a large part of the inauguration and how I was uncomfortable with that. But those are different issues, Wayne. I need an answer on the specific thing we're talking about.
I'll give you a great answer. I think the major reason for our financial collapse wasn't the greed of Wall Street, although that was a big contributing factor. The major reason was government getting involved in the process in the first place. I'll name one to you, the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. It was put together under Jimmy Carter. It was supercharged under Bill Clinton. And unfortunately, George Bush went along with it as well.
Wait, that's a different issue. I want to get to that issue second. I'm going to get to that issue, okay? But I'm asking you, look, for example, in 2004, what they allowed the financial companies to do is to leverage things instead of just 12 to 1, meaning that they had to keep $1 in the bank for every $12 of bets they made. They allowed it to go to 30 to 1.
Oh, you're not going to get a big argument over me over that one.
Okay, so in fact there the government would have been better off showing more oversight there and making sure that they weren't over-leveraged.
Well, yeah, the difference between your argument and mine is not that I don't agree that, there were a lot of greedy Wall Streeters who made a lot of big mistakes, and they had some enabling by the government.
But Wayne,
but the government allowed it, don't you see, Jake? You can't ask government to do more when they allowed it all to happen in the first place. Government is your failure, not private industry.
No. Wayne, let's focus, okay? Because the root of the problem isn't that the Wall Street guys were greedy. The whole point of capitalism is to be greedy. Of course they were going to do what they did given the incentives and disincentives that they had. The question is, who sets the rules? Who allows them to be greedy or says, you know what, you cannot be greedy with the public money?
Hey, Jake, you have me wrong if you think I'm one of these libertarians that believes in anarchy and no government. I believe in limited government, making it as small and unobtrusive as possible, and I don't want government destroying capitalism by setting far too many rules that make it impossible for an entrepreneur to succeed. But I don't think there should be no rules and no laws, and no one supports that.
All right, but so, Wayne, the problem here isn't too little laws. You have to concede that. It was too little oversight, that the government should have been more involved in saying, here are the risks that you cannot take. Here are the credit default swaps that you cannot do without oversight.
Who is it, Jenk, that you want to do the oversight? Do you want it to be wonderful liberals like Charles Rangel who cheated on his taxes? No. Do you want it to be Daschle who cheats on his taxes? Do you want to be Timothy Geithner who cheats on his taxes? Who is it that you think is the moral authority to tell these corporations and me how to run a business when these guys know nothing about running a business, and they're all obviously believers in the Leone Helmsley theory of government, which is taxes are for the little people and rules are for the little people. I can break them and I don't have to pay them. If you trust these people, you must be high. I don't trust them. See, I don't think government could ever do the right job. It's as simple as that.
Wayne, that doesn't make any sense. And let me explain why I don't think it does, okay? Because first of all, you're making this a partisan thing. I don't give a damn about Rangel. And if he, didn't pay his taxes and Geithner and Daschle didn't, then they got an issue, okay? And then they got a problem. And there are other reasons why I don't fully trust Geithner, because he's part of the same mindset of Wall Street, okay?
I agree.
So this is not a partisan thing. You asked me the question of who do I trust to do that? Well, we've got to have some rule makers. And in this case, it is not the politicians. It is people like the head of the SEC. Now, if you don't have an SEC because you don't trust government at all, then you're going to have a situation where anybody can do insider trading.
Jackie, there's no debate. You're trying to start a fight where there is none. There's got to be an SEC. No one believes there should be no SEC.
So you agree that the government should be involved and, in fact, was not involved enough in leading to this financial debacle.
I agree the government has some reason and some authority and some involvement in business every day to make sure that the average little guy doesn't get ripped off.
Exactly.
But if you go to the extreme, government will smother capitalism and destroy Wall Street, and that will be an overreaction we don't need. And unfortunately, I believe that's what's going to happen. You're going to kill business, kill capitalism, and Obama's going to introduce something that would be more like what they've got in Europe today. I guess you'd call it socialized capitalism. And you know what, Jenk? It doesn't work, because guess what? We're the greatest economy in the world, and France is not. And that's because France is socialist, and we're not.
We're talking to Wayne Allen Root. He ran for VP for the Libertarian Party, and his book is The Conscience of a Libertarian, Empowering the Citizen Revolution with God, Guns, Gambling, and Tax Cuts. We'll put that book up on the website, on theyoungturks.com, in our library section, so you can read it for yourself. Wayne, you're telling government to get out of the way and that we're doing everything right and France is doing things wrong, but France's economy and financial system didn't just blow up, ours did. And it's because the government got out of the way. So let's go to...
Yeah, you're missing the point here, Jenk. The whole world learned a lesson from all this, that even when America is greedy and even when we do it wrong, when we go up, they go up. When we go down, they go down. The whole world economy is being destroyed, yes, by America's problems, but do you realize the reason why that's true? Because we have and had and always will have the greatest economy in the world. Don't tinker with it too much and destroy it now, Jenk, because that doesn't make much sense now, does it? We are the greatest economy in the world.
Wayne,
how did we get there, Jenk?
We got there through what I would call moderation and sensible regulation. Now, look, I'm a capitalist, so you're arguing with people that don't exist.
Glad to hear that.
I'm a diehard capitalist.
Good.
I don't think.
So am I.
I don't think communism made a lick of sense. I never did. Okay. Now, what you call socialism is a different question, because now you can say, oh, because you did a little bit more government, I'm going to call it socialist.
No, I told you I'd call it socialized capitalism. That's what they've got in Europe right now. It's not communism. It's not socialism. But it's Big Brother trying to take control of the entire industry, the entire economic system in the name of helping workers and unionizing.
Wayne, that's where you go wrong. It's not Big Brother trying to control all of industry. it's Big Brother, if you want to call it that term, or a referee or a rule maker saying, here are the rules within which you should compete. Go ahead and compete. Capitalism works. That's why we're the best, et cetera, yada, yada, why we built this great economy and the world has, and whoever has adopted it has done better. But if you don't have rules, then people will, of course, be greedy. That is the nature of human beings. That's why communism didn't work in the first place. So, in this case, what we had, so we go to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which you started with. Wayne, that wasn't the primary problem in the mortgage meltdown. So now the mortgage meltdown.
The Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 was the primary reason for the mortgage meltdown. Certainly one of the major contributing factors.
But Wayne, you got to get your. All right, look, I don't want to say that because that sounds rude, but the facts, in my opinion, if you can have facts in your opinion, are a little different because I'm trying to be polite about it. Because, in fact, the private industry put out much worse loans on average, and we've done this on the show, and we've had people bring us the facts on it specifically, than the Community Reinvestment Act authorized institutions did. In fact, the Community Reinvestment Act had, as a percentage, did much better than the regular private industry. Okay, so it's not true to say that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the 1977 law was the root of the problem. It wasn't. The root of the problem was that people could make commissions and fees off of mortgages they never planned to keep in the first place, because the rules were set up in a way that they could take the mortgage and give it to somebody else, carry none of the risk, and make the commissions in the first place.
I understand. I'm not a fan of any of those rules. I'm also not a fan of the fact that the government backed, meaning guaranteed, mortgages by banks like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which allowed them to take unnecessary risks. If the government hadn't backed it, they never would have taken those kind of risks. Let's get the government out of these quasi-private government industries. Is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac government, or is it private? Is the Federal Reserve government, or is it private? I say get the government out of it, and the private sector will determine for itself what risks to take. And if they fail, don't bail them out. They don't deserve a bailout. And I think you as a liberal should certainly agree with me. Why are we bailing out Wall Street millionaires or billionaires?
Wayne, we do have significant agreement there. In fact, I think the idea of these quasi-public, quasi-private institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac don't make any sense. We need to have clear rules. Are they private? Are they public? How much are we going to back their loans? What kind of risk can they take and can they not take? But that involves rulemaking. So let me throw one last question as to rulemaking in that regard for you. Should the government have said, hey, look, if you are going to give out a mortgage, you cannot, as an example, you cannot give that mortgage to someone else, because then you have absolutely no incentive to make sure that you're given a legitimate mortgage.
Yeah, listen, I'm not saying that's wrong. I haven't studied that rule. I'm not sitting here as a banker, and I'm not going to give you an absolute yes or an absolute no. The only thing I'm trying to tell you is that the reason I'm a fiscal conservative is I own several businesses, and I know the effect government has on me, Cenk, and it's disastrous. I'd rather not even open a business than be forced by government rules to employ people for life, and be forced to help them to unionize, and be forced to give them all kinds of benefits that, to be honest with you, it isn't worth the risk on my part to start a business if I'm going to have to give up all the rewards to them. So you got to understand there's two sides to every story.
No question.
And I was the CEO of a publicly traded company, and I could tell you Sarbanes-Oxley was a disaster. It was an overreaction to all the capitalists on Wall Street that ripped off consumers. Terrible thing. Did they need to have some laws reining them in? Absolutely. Was Sarbanes-Oxley an overreaction? Yes, it was, and that also contributed to the meltdown of Wall Street, because you can't even do your job as a CEO anymore. Sarbanes-Oxley makes it more important to fill out government regulations and more expensive than to actually run your company. So my point is, if liberals are going to come out now with Obama and his friends, and they're going to come out and with all kinds of new rules, complex draconian rules, you're going to choke business to death. So does there need to be regulation? Yes. I'm not a wild-eyed, to the right of Attila the Hun, rabid capitalist who thinks there are no rules in the world. I don't agree with that. But I do want it to remain a free and unfettered market for the most part, without government tying my hands behind my back. That's all.
I hear you. Final thing on this, Wayne, and the reason that I take up issue with it in the first place, the article that I read of yours, etc., is because, look, I get the one side of it. My dad's a small business owner. He just got stuck with a $28,000 bill for something that his the former owner of the building did. He has nothing to do with it. It's a rule that doesn't make any sense, and that really hurts him. So I get the sense that senseless regulation or over-regulation is a problem. But when you come out and say, that the government is the problem, when the government getting involved is the problem, I think that you're putting out a misleading statement. Because the issue isn't whether government shouldn't be involved at all or should be completely involved in taking over everything. The issue is, where do you draw the line? Where do you have that balance? And in this case, part of the reason we had the financial meltdown is because the government wasn't balanced. It was way to the right, where they got pulled out completely and led to this debacle. So can we get agreement on that?
We can get agreement that government didn't do their job. The difference between you and me is I just don't know how you think government will ever do their job when it's made up of bureaucrats who, A, know nothing about running a business, B, most of whom are corrupt themselves and don't even pay their own taxes, and C, most of whom are incompetent and couldn't get a job in the private sector. I don't trust them to oversee business. That's my only point between you and me.
But
I don't trust business and I don't trust them.
But Wayne, then you can't have any rules, because you say they're made by bureaucrats and I don't trust them.
We have a lot of areas of agreement. That might be one we disagree. But listen, let me give you a liberal area of agreement. I believe that if you're going to talk about the welfare mother in Detroit with 5 kids, you better start talking about all the CEOs on Wall Street who are taking much bigger welfare payments than that mother in Detroit. So, that's the difference between me and a typical conservative in the Republican Party. I think corporate welfare at this point is worse than individual welfare. There's no need for either one of them.
That's a perfect point of agreement to end on. Wayne Allen Root was the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarians in 2008, and his book is The Conscience of a Libertarian, Empowering the Citizen Revolution with God, Guns, Gambling, and Tax Cuts. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us on The Young